And if there's questions along the way, feel free to chat them at us, and we'll respond to them when we feel is the most appropriate. We have that power.
All right, and if everybody could, I think everybody's muted, but if you could just double check to mute during the presentation, and then at the end we'll have some time for questions. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. First of all, thank you all so much for coming. We know that, there's a lot going on these days. Am I not sharing this one?
I don't know. Can everyone see a presentation?
Can everybody see?
Yep, you're good.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
Perfect. I might minimize this. That's okay. Okay, so as you know, we're gathered here today to talk about real estate investing. And the reason that Joe and I love teaching this class is because we fell into real estate investing completely by accident in our early 20s. And since then have done a whole bunch of different types of real estate investing. And it has been one of the best ways that we've been able to build wealth for our family. And so that's why we teach this class, is to show all of you exactly how we've done it and some of the things that we've learned along the way that we wish we had known back then, so that you can get into it, get over any hurdles that you might have, and get started. Okay, so to start, let me ask you, are you ready to put your money to work for you through investing in real estate, and to overcome your fears of getting started and to build true wealth and create a legacy for your family? If so, do us a favor, open up that chat box and type in yes. Just put it out to the universe. Just tell the universe you are ready. All right, I see those chats coming in. It's that blinking one right there.
Okay.
All right.
Awesome. Cool.
Tried so much but failed. Yep, we're going to talk about that too. All right. Heck yes. Yes. All right. Love it. Okay. So now consider this. Have you maybe wanted to invest in real estate but didn't know where to start? Or perhaps you've gotten your funds ready, but then got scared because of the process or the risks. Or maybe you've been curious about whether rental properties are indeed the best fit for your goals. Or maybe, like Rev said, maybe you've tried, but you've failed and you're looking for a new start. Yeah, that's going to bother me every time. So today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how to create wealth through real estate, all without having to have any previous real estate investing experience, without needing hundreds of thousands of dollars to get started, and without needing to fix a single toilet. So whether you are here because you have never invested in real estate before, or you have invested before but you want to learn more, no matter where you are on this spectrum, we have something for you in this class, and you will take something valuable away for your investing journey. Our main goals for this class are to give you to make sure that you walk away with two main things. One is that you know that the single best way to build wealth for your family is to invest in real estate. And we're going to show you exactly why that is. And the second is for you to know that the only way to be successful investing in real estate is to figure out first your own investing goals. Not to go out and look at properties, not even to go and underwrite a whole bunch of deals, but to actually start first with yourself. And we're going to walk you through a process to help you figure out exactly what your personal investing goals are. Okay, so today we're going to cover three main things. First, we're going to start with our story. I mentioned that we started in our early 20s, so we'll tell you a little bit more about that and all that we've done in the time since then. We're only like, what, 25 now?
That's
so that's
right.
in like 5 years, right? Anyway, we're going to talk about the top five myths that hold most people back from getting started in real estate. And then we're going to give you the 3 keys to getting off to a fast start with investing in real estate. All right, you ready to dive in?
I'm ready.
Okay,
Let's do it.
let's do it. Okay, so first, let's start with our story. So these are actual photos of me and Joe back in our early 20s. This was the first duplex that we bought. We were in our, like I said, we had just graduated from college. We had just gotten married. We were living in Washington, D.C. at the time, and we thought we'd be all trendy and cool, and we were gonna go buy a condo or a loft in D.C. and, you know, one of those trendy neighborhoods, Adams Morgan or DuPont Circle, and we thought we would be all hip and cool. And thankfully, we had a brilliant realtor who said, you know what if, you know, there's a lot of these row homes in DC, and that's what you see pictured on the right there. And he said, well, what if instead of a condo or a loft, you got one of these row homes? Now, these row homes often have 2 units or more, and you can live in one unit and rent out the other unit. And he said, and I'll never forget this, he said, if you play your cards right, eventually you could get that property to be cash flow positive. And I had never heard those words put together like that before. My parents had never even bought a house the whole time I was growing up. So I knew nothing about real estate, but I knew I liked the sound of those words together, cash flow positive. And so I said, okay, I'm signing up, whatever you got, I'll do that. And so we started looking at these row homes instead. And so that's what is pictured here, our very first duplex that we bought in DC. And the top 2 floors was a 3-bedroom, so we lived up there. And then the bottom unit, you can see the second entrance down there. So the bottom unit was a 1-bedroom, 1-bath. And so that was our first experience with being landlords. We were house hacking, as they call it now. And so you can see all the photos of us. We cleaned it up. We really rolled up our sleeves and put in that sweat equity. And we started to get that cash flow to help us pay down our mortgage. And that's when the light bulb went off and we said, there's something here. Because no matter if we went to work or not, we were still getting that rent check every month. And so that's when we started to continue to collect more and more properties. So it wasn't an easy path, but I'm going to point out some of these properties here. So of course, on the left-hand side, you have that same duplex that we just talked about. Immediately to the right of that is a green duplex, actually on the exact same block. So we said, hey, this tan-colored duplex, we called it Alpha. We said, Alpha worked. We got good cash flow out of that. Let's do another. And so we got Bravo right around the block. Same thing. We moved into the top 2 floors, rented out the bottom, and we thought, okay, this is great. Let's just keep rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And so we did that even after we moved to the Bay Area. We did that in Oakland for a couple of additional duplexes. And as some of you may know, now we have kids, and kids come with a lot of stuff. And of course, being here in the Bay Area, we said, oh my gosh, it's going to take years to save up for another down payment, for another duplex. And then we got to move all of our stuff, all the kids' stuff, change schools. And we're like, okay, so maybe we're past that season of our life where we want to keep doing this house hacking. Maybe it's time for something else. So that's when we started to look at out-of-state investing. We looked at all of these different markets all around the country. And like I mentioned earlier, it was based on our personal investing goals. We decided what our investing goals were, and then we looked at different markets to see what would match our goals. And we happened upon a market in the Southeast, Huntsville, Alabama. And a lot of the photos you see here, the top two there are in Huntsville. The bottom two are in Huntsville.
Bottom right.
Bottom right two, yes, are in Huntsville. And so we started quickly collecting these small multi-units. So we got a 6-plex, an 8-plex, another 8-plex. And the thing is, when you live in the Bay Area and then you look outside of the Bay Area at real estate, everything looks like it's on fire sale. We're looking at these properties. I swear, the first one I called up our realtor and I was like, this 4-unit that's listed for $200,000. I said, what's wrong with it? And he said, oh no, that's a nice area, good schools, very safe. And I said, are you kidding? I can get 4 units for $200,000? Okay, give me all of them. Give me all of them. And so we quickly amassed all of these units, but it was our first time doing a non-house hack. And so what I mean by that is we weren't living in the units, whereas with the duplexes, we would live in one unit and rent out the other. So our tenants were very similar to us. They had steady jobs, they paid on time, they let us know when things went wrong, they didn't steal from us, little things, you know. But then when we started investing out of state in developing areas where the cash flow tends to be a little higher, we started running into issues that we didn't foresee. And so what happened was, during this time though, we amassed all these properties, and then people started coming to us and they said, oh, I like what you're doing there. I want to do that too. Can you teach me? And we said, yeah, come on in. We'll teach you. So here's what you do. You got to research the markets, you find the brokers, you underwrite the properties, talk to a lender, and we're going down the steps and they're like, it's like their face just glazes over and they're like, no, I think this whole real estate thing isn't for me, which is probably what a lot of you have experienced as well, as you've started down that path, but you know, you're busy with life, and the last thing you want to do on a weekday evening after a long day at work or on a weekend when you're with your kids is sit down and underwrite a property, right? And so that's when we found out about something called syndications, which are group investments where we could be passive investors, meaning we could just put in our money and somebody else would then do the heavy lifting of managing the property for us. So more on that in a minute, but those are the larger properties that you see here. And so things like this one here is in, I think this one's in Dallas, and then this one is in, I think this one's in San Antonio. We have so many at this point, I forget where they all are. This one is in, this one's in Huntsville, and then this one is in San Antonio. So we were able to very quickly, through syndications, diversify our portfolio and invest in commercial real estate. So the turning point. Now, I told you that it took us a long time. It was, gosh, we were house hacking a duplex every other year for maybe like 8 years, right?
Yep.
And it was slow going. As you can imagine, it's 1 every 2 years, right? So it's slow going. But then within the last 2 to 3 years, we've quickly amassed hundreds and hundreds of units. So the turning point there happened when we realized that there's more than one way to invest in real estate. We thought that if we wanted to invest in real estate, we had to use rental properties. We had to go buy a property. We had to find a tenant. We had to deal with the management ourselves. And that's just simply not the case. So that's exactly what we're going to talk about in the rest of this time.
So I got to talk about the 5 things that might keep people from getting started in investing in real estate, or in some of our cases, reinvesting in real estate. So we'll walk through these 5 myths. I'm sure that there are going to be questions about the myths or some additional thoughts that you might have. Again, feel free to chat your questions in, and we'll get to them at the end. So our first myth is that you need a lot of money to get started in real estate. Now, I know our audience today is made up roughly half of real estate agents, so there might be some inside knowledge there. But the general, I guess the counter to that myth is that there are absolutely types of real estate that you can invest in without hundreds of thousands of dollars. We house hacked ourselves, our second house hack. We took advantage of an FHA loan at 3.5% down, which at that purchase price was something like $20,000 or $30,000. So there are absolutely some lower down payment options and lower cash flow or cash out-of-pocket requirements to get started. Additionally, there are things like flipping, where you might be able to utilize other people's money for 100% of the purchase price and get invested in real estate with no money in at all. And lastly, like the syndications that Annie was talking about, those typically have a minimum buy-in of around $50,000, and she'll get into more details at the end on that. So I guess the short of it is, no, you don't need hundreds of thousands of dollars. Even here in the Bay Area, you can start house hacking for as little as 3.5% down. And I have clients that are continually doing it as recently as this year. Our second myth is that you may not have enough time to invest in real estate, and that there is absolutely a lot of time required to do the market research. Like Annie was talking about, when we decided to do out-of-state investing, there were hundreds of markets that we ended up, I say we, there were hundreds of markets that Annie researched and looked into before ultimately identifying Huntsville as where we wanted to do our out-of-state investing. It took a lot of time and energy. Yet there are also absolutely ways that you can leverage out that time spent, especially through, again, the syndication idea, where you can have other people investing their time to do the research for you. At the same time, locally here, it's, if you're investing locally, having a team around you that you can trust and rely on for sound advice is key. So that's your real estate agent, your lender, potentially a landlord attorney and a CPA, and potentially other people, property managers and whatnot. Having great people around you will help you through the process and ultimately lower the amount of time that you have to invest, or that you have to spend on your real estate investment. Number 3 is you need to be handy and know how to fix toilets. And that can be the case if you're house hacking, for sure. I have fixed my fair share of toilets. It's not my favorite thing to do. And again, that's part of what led us to where we are today, where we do not fix toilets. So again, through out-of-state investing, where you have property managers take on that role for you, or through syndications where you have a whole asset management team, so you don't even know when the toilet is broken, are great ways to avoid having to fix toilets. Myth number 4, and please feel free to interject if you have something to add. Okay. Myth number 4, this is a great time to be talking about myth number 4. Now is not the right time to invest, given what the market is doing. We know what's happening out there, so I completely am understanding that maybe today is not the right time to be investing in your first real estate investment. I would say that now is the time to be preparing, regardless of how this market turns up, how it ends up after this coronavirus pandemic. Being prepared to take action is going to save you a lot of time, as well as make sure that you're ready to jump on opportunity. So even if we come out in a down market, that's the time that millionaires are made, and that's the time to invest. And if we don't, there are still, as in if we don't, as in it comes out and the market's just as strong as it was 2 months ago, there are still great investments out there. It's just a matter of finding the investment. There's never a bad time to invest. There are just bad investments.
And the key is to know what your investing goals are and to not compromise on that. No matter what the market is doing over here, you should know what your baseline is and what you are looking for out of an investment, so that no matter what happens to the market, you're still looking for the same exact thing. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. But for example, if you're looking for, let's say, $200 per door in cash flow, that's what you're looking for. No matter what the market does, that's what you look for, and you don't compromise on your own, on what you're looking for. That's the key.
All right, myth number 5, investing in real estate is risky. And there may be some of you out there that have seen the real risks and maybe have lost homes in the last housing crisis. So yes, investing in real estate absolutely can be risky. What I would suggest is that the better researched you are, the more knowledgeable you are, and the better the team around you, the safer your investments are. So again, the counter to this myth is making sure that you have that team that you trust around you, that you understand what you are investing in. So if you're investing in a local rental, for example, that means knowing what the landlord-tenant laws are like, knowing what the market is doing, and going through that whole research process. Same with out of state. Where are the jobs coming from? What are the unemployment rates? What's the job growth look like and population growth? What's the trajectory of that market? And with the syndication, does the team have a great track record? Is it underwritten conservatively enough so that I can be confident that the returns that are projected are realistic?
And the key is not to get rid of all of the risk, right? Because if you get rid of all the risk, you also get rid of all of the return. That's what a savings account is, right? There's no risk. I put my money in, but I only got this little bit every month. So if you want that opportunity to build wealth, you have to be comfortable taking on some amount of risk, but it's not about getting rid of all the risk. It's about mitigating the risk and having multiple backup plans and strategies in place for when things inevitably don't go according to plan, because real estate never goes exactly according to plan.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Okay, so now hopefully those top 5 myths, hopefully, well, let's just see a show of hands, maybe not a show of hands, a show of chats. Have any of you ever experienced, or have any of those 5 myths held you back from investing in real estate? If so, then type yes into the chat box, or tell us more about the myths that might have been holding you back.
I was playing with pulling the chat up and I missed the question. What was the question?
Oh, the question, I just wanted to hear if anybody has been held back from investing in real estate because of any of those myths.
Yeah. Okay. So we got some answers coming in. Mm-hmm. D is all good. Alicia says I need the money first myth.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Long distance. Yeah, that's a big hurdle that we had to overcome too. A lot of people feel like it's safer to invest in your backyard because you can go and drive to it, you can see it. But as you know, living in the Bay Area, investing in real estate here comes with a whole lot of additional complications and hurdles.
Yes, through costs and rent control and all that sort of thing. Researching the best place, the best markets. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Thanks, Lynette.
Yeah. Okay, so at this point, we've covered some of the myths. Thank you for chiming in, those of you who did. And so hopefully at this point, you are over some of the hurdles, maybe not all of the hurdles, it takes some time to marinate, but over some of the hurdles that were holding you back from investing in real estate or getting started. So now what we want to do is talk about the 3 keys to defining your own investing goals so that you can maximize your real estate investing success. So we've talked about this a few times throughout this conversation, is that it's not about what's going on in the market. It's not about what properties are listed out there. It's not even about the underwriting or the team. It starts first with your personal investing goals. And this was something we didn't know. And so we tried a whole bunch of different things. Some things worked for us, some things didn't. We're like, why was that one such a great one and that one wasn't? And then we realized it was because some matched up closely to our investing goals and what we were looking for at the time, and others maybe didn't. So some might work for you, and those same ones might not be great for us. So that's why it's important to think about your personal investing goals. So we're going to start first with one of the big ones that I wish we had known starting out, because you saw those pictures of us with our sleeves rolled up and scrubbing the stuff, and Joe with the, we did all sorts of stuff in those early days. We thought it was the only way. We thought you had to be active. We thought you had to roll up your sleeves. You had to go find those tenants yourselves. Even with a property manager, we thought, we still had to manage the property manager. We still had to make those strategic decisions. And so that's what this key is about, is really understanding how involved you want to be with your investment. So that's what we mean by active versus passive. So active, do you want to be in it? Do you want to have those decision-making powers, and also perhaps roll up your sleeves and do some of that heavy lifting? Or are you on the passive side? Are you wanting to just put your money in and then sit back? So on the spectrum, we have on the left-hand side, perhaps you have very little time and you want to be hands-off. Or all the way on the right-hand side, maybe you have lots of time and you want to be super involved and learn the process and really have control over all of it. And so just mentally think about where you might fall on this spectrum. So of course, on the right-hand side, very active is a fix and flip, right? So with a fix and flip, which I can't take credit for it, Joe did all of it. Joe recently did a fix and flip, and it was a lot of work. It was a lot of work every day, managing it, staying on budget, making decisions about fixtures and everything. And so that involves a lot of active participation. Versus all the way on the other end, all the way on the hands-off end, is a syndication. So I mentioned earlier that's a group investment, and as a passive investor in a syndication, all we do is we put our money in with hundreds, sometimes hundreds of other investors. So let's say we have 50,000, you have 50,000, somebody else has 100,000, and on, and we pool together all these investors. And now suddenly we have not just $50,000 to invest in a single family rental, but we have millions of dollars. And so now we put it into, say, an apartment building. And then as passive investors, we just get to sit back and collect the monthly cash flow. And the operators on the project, those are the people who are managing the renovations, managing the property manager, and doing all that heavy lifting. So the syndication side is very passive. And then in the middle, you have some of the other things that we've been talking about. So you have house hacking sort of in the middle there. And then you have a rental that you manage. That's a little bit more work because you're going to be the person they're calling with that broken toilet at 3 a.m. versus a rental with a good property manager. You're still going to have to be involved and make some of those key strategic decisions, but it's going to be a little bit more hands-off. So decide where you might land on this spectrum. And then we'll go to the second key.
Yeah. So the second key is all about how long you want your capital, your money tied up in the investment. So the conversation here is, short time, or are you okay with it being invested for a long time? So same thing, we're going to look at a spectrum, and on the short horizon, which might be, there we go, fix and flip, might be just a few months of an investment. So it might require a lot of capital, like it did in my case last year. Yet that money is coming back just a few short months later. I think in our case it was 4 months. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have buy and hold rentals. And of course, these have a flexible timeline. They're typically going to make more sense to hold them for a while, so you can collect the cash flow in the meantime, while appreciation helps you make a overall good return on the investment. And same with house hacking. It's a long-ish term, but can also be flexible. Our shortest house hack was 3 months, but that is not normal. Don't plan on that. And then on the syndication side, these passive investments, typically the hold is about 5 to 7 years. Sometimes it's projected to be a little bit shorter, so it does vary a little bit. But I would go in with the plan to have the money invested for about 5 years.
Okay, and that brings us to our third and final key. So hopefully at this point you know where you fall on the active versus passive spectrum and where you fall on the short versus long-term spectrum. And so now let's talk about cash flow versus appreciation. So this is, do you want money now or money later? Okay, so on one end of the spectrum, we have cash flow, and cash flow is that ongoing passive income. Oftentimes people who want to quit their jobs, which is none of you on this call because you all love your jobs, right? But you might want to quit your job or supplement your income with some of that steady passive income, so that you might want more cash flow. Versus if you don't need money now, but you want this long-term potential for appreciation down the road for maybe retirement, say, or your kids' college, then maybe you want to lean more heavily on the appreciation side. But as you can tell, this is a spectrum. It's not one or the other. Often things will land somewhere in the middle, so you can get a good hybrid of both. So, for example, we live in a unique place. So with a local rental here in Oakland or the Bay Area, you're probably not going to see any or very little cash flow. And so you might even need to pay into that property every month. But the trade-off is that the market here has been appreciating and continues to appreciate. So you can probably bet on that long-term appreciation. Same here with a fix and flip. Now this one you are putting in, it's a little bit shorter of a timeline, but that's because you're putting in the work to really improve that property and really force that appreciation. On the other side, you've got a not local rental perhaps in a smaller market. That's going to give you probably a lot of cash flow because you're probably going to be able to purchase it for a pretty low price and be able to get reasonable rent out of it. And so then you'll have that delta between your mortgage and expenses and the rental income. So you'll have a nice bit of cash flow every month. But the downside of that is often in those smaller markets, the appreciation is much slower. And so Joe and I met originally in Memphis. We met in high school, if you can believe it. And we were in Memphis, Tennessee. And I remember the house that your parents bought. when they bought it versus when they sold it, it was practically the same. It was like they didn't make much money. They raised 4 kids in it, but they didn't make much money off of the house. But if you had had a rental there, you could have made a lot of money in cash flow every month. But when you go to sell it, it's probably not going to sell for too much more than what you bought it for.
Yeah. And these markets are on a spectrum themselves. We like to think that we're special and unique here in Oakland in the Bay Area, yet there are other markets like Seattle that are also very appreciation heavy and very low cash flow. And then there's some in the middle. We like to think Huntsville lands somewhere in the middle that has both cash flow and appreciation components.
Mm-hmm. And then in the middle, you've got house hacking and syndications. So with house hacking, we have a healthy mix of both because we're buying here in Oakland in an appreciating market, and we're also able to get some of that cash flow every month to help offset our mortgage.
Offset the housing payments that we would have, yes, regardless of if we were wherever we lived.
Right. And then with a syndication is almost like a fix and flip, but on a massive scale. And so instead of renovating just one single unit, we're renovating hundreds of units. And so there is some of that forced equity, that forced appreciation. And we're also investing in growing markets. So there's some appreciation from the market growth. And we always buy cash flowing properties. So it's always cash flowing up front, even if we don't do any of the renovations. So hopefully now that gives you a good idea of where you might land on this spectrum and what's more important to you, cash flow or appreciation, or a mix of both.
Yeah, and just to redefine those words real quick, cash flow is money in your pocket now, appreciation is money in your pocket later. They're both money. They're both good.
It's true. It's all money. We like money. Okay, so now that we've talked about our story, we've talked about some of the myths that might be holding you back and some of the keys that you should be thinking about when defining your own investing goals. So now what we wanted to do is share with you a couple of stories of our actual clients who have started investing in real estate.
Yeah, so Abby and Ben were friends of ours and now clients of mine who were looking for a home locally and ultimately decided to follow the house hacking model. So they wanted to purchase a duplex or a triplex, live in one unit, rent the others out to ultimately lower their overall housing payments. To add a complication to things, they also didn't have a lot of cash to put down. So they ended up purchasing with a 3.5% down FHA loan here in Oakland. I know that there's stigma against FHA, yet it is possible. We get clients into contract all the time using those low down payment loans, including Abby and Ben. So now they own they purchased a property in the Diamond District for about $800,000. And Ben is very handy, so he chose to improve the property. It was recently appraised only 6 months after they bought it for over $1.1 million. So they're getting the cash flow benefits of having their tenants pay part of their mortgage, and they just forced appreciation by over $300,000 through some fairly minor and inexpensive renovations. Yet he was handy. So they are an example of active real estate investors.
And then on the other side, we've got Mina and Nathan, passive investors. Now, Mina, when she found out she was pregnant with her first child, she was working as in business development at the time, and all her life she had wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. So when she found out she was pregnant, she and Nathan started to think about, okay, well, how are we going to make this possible? And so they started researching, and they realized that real rental properties probably would be a little bit too much work for them with a growing family. And luckily, they stumbled upon passive investing through real estate syndication. So they started investing in one after another. So as they continue to grow their family, they also continue to grow their real estate portfolio through passive investing. And now they're at a point, they live in San Francisco, and they're at a point where their passive income from their real estate syndication investments can cover their living expenses in San Francisco. So their housing and their living expenses, which is huge. All right. I thought you were going to move it, so I stopped talking.
Sorry, I'll press the button. Okay.
The awkwardness of online presentations, guys. All right. So with that, we've now covered our story, the top five myths holding most people back from getting started in real estate investing, and the 3 keys that you should consider as you're defining your own investing goals. So let me ask you, did you learn at least one new thing during this presentation, or were you reminded of at least one thing that you already knew? If so, type yes into that chat box.
Ooh, we got some questions too. All right, we'll come back to those questions.
Yes, yes, good. Now I know we didn't waste our time. Okay. Whew. Yes, was reminded of syndication. Good stuff. Okay, awesome. I'm glad that you guys have taken some things away, and we'll come back to those questions in just a few minutes. But what we wanted to do before we open it up for questions is let you know that we are here to help you guys get started on your own investing journeys, or even help you get restarted. If you had done it before and you didn't have much success, we're here to help you troubleshoot as well. Of course, Joe has his Joe Dickerson Group, and I'm a co-founder of a company called Good Egg Investments, and we do real estate syndications. And so whether you are on that active side or the passive side, we should, I don't know. I don't know
if it's mirrored.
If it's mirrored. Anyway, I was going to move us so we're on the right side. But anyway, you get the idea. So if you're more on the active side, you're looking at rental properties, you're looking at house hacking or fix and flips, either here in the Bay Area or in a different market. Joe and his team can definitely help you with that. Even if you don't work directly with him to buy your property, he's always a great source of knowledge about local ordinances, about regional markets, connecting you with other agents who know investing in other areas.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I know a lot of you, again, are real estate agents out there. So this is you. You are the active side, and you can project that to your clients and make sure that they understand what their options are. So I hope you take away what you've learned here to help you better counsel your clients. And that said, I'm still here to help and answer questions.
And then if you decide you're on the more passive side and you want to be more hands-off, you just want to put in your money, you don't want to deal with it, then we're here to help you through Good Egg Investments. I mean, these real estate syndications, we didn't know about them for the first 10 or so years that we were investing in real estate, and that's because they can be very hard to find. You have to sort of know somebody who's doing them in order to find, especially the really good deals. And so that's why we created Good Egg Investments, to help people like you find and connect with those opportunities. And so at this point, you've got 2 choices. You can either, after this presentation ends, you can close this window and decide, okay, well, that was a nice presentation. I learned a lot, but you know what? I'm going to go back to what I was doing before. I'm going to go check on my kids and, just forget that, most of this happened, but I have the knowledge in my head. Or you can actually take action and invest in yourself and your future. And so we hope that something within all that we've said and shared with you today will inspire you to action, because that's the only way you'll be able to actually get on the road to investing in real estate and building wealth for your family. So whether you're on the active or passive side, like I said, we can help you, or Joe can.
About the coffee date?
Yeah.
We're not having coffee.
We're not
right
having
now.
coffee. Virtual coffee.
Virtual coffee date.
Virtual coffee dates. On the Good Egg side, if you're interested in investing passively, I highly recommend that you sign up for our Good Egg Investor Club. It's free to join. It's no commitment. And we'll be able to get to know you and your investing goals better, and then to share investment opportunities with you. But regardless of all of that and where you land, we did want to give you a free gift for being here today. A copy of our book. It's called Investing for Good, The Surprising Strategy for Building Wealth While Also Making an Impact. So my co-founder and I co-wrote this. Her name is Julie Lamb. And so we've got a copy of this book for every single one of you. I wish we were in a classroom so we could hand it out to you, but we can't. So you can go to goodegginvestments.com/book. And we will need a little help paying for the shipping, or maybe I could give you some, I don't know when the office is going to be back. But anyway, either way, if you want one soon, you can go to that URL and pay for the shipping, and we'll send this out to you as soon as we can. Okay.
All right. Shall we answer some questions?
Yes, let's do it.
All right, so I can hit this button. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then I can see some smiling faces. Great. All right, so start throwing your questions out. We're going to start with, let's see here. Melisha, do you want to answer the syndication question there?
Good question. Okay, with the syndication, how much money goes to fees, taxes, commissions, to the brokers, etc.? Oh, that's a good question. So let me back up and say, so the basics of a syndication. So typically, as Joe mentioned, our minimum investment is $50,000. And so that's usually over a whole time of 5 years. So you invest $50,000 and you expect it to have that investment in there for 5 years. And during that time, you are receiving monthly cash flow to the tune of about 8% per year. So on $50,000, that comes out to about $333 a month. And then at the tail end, at that 5-year mark, when we sell, then you get your $50,000 back, plus another about 40 to 60% of your original investment on top of that. So that's another, I don't know, what is that? $30,000 on top of that. So all in all, what we aim to do is to double your investment from $50,000 to $100,000 within the span of that 5 years. Now, as to the question about the fees and the taxes and everything, when you invest your $50,000, that includes any of the fees to the general partnership. You don't pay anything on top of that $50,000. So all of those fees and things are already underwritten into the deal. And as for taxes, that's a whole separate matter. So you will get what's called a Schedule K-1 for your taxes every year. It's a statement of your income and losses on that particular investment. And typically, if everything goes right, typically it'll show that you have a lot of paper losses, even while you're cash flowing every month, remember, but you have a lot of paper losses, which can be really great, especially for all of you here who are real estate professionals, because that means you can take those losses, and I'm not a CPA, but I can't guarantee this, but I think this is how it works, that you can take those paper losses and then apply them to your income because you are a real estate professional.
And apply those losses without limit. So unlimited passive losses for real estate professionals. Again, talk to your CPA. Yeah, that's how it's worked out, and that's how our CPA has advised us. And just to give you my recent K1 for an investment I made last year, a $50,000 investment showed a $30,000 paper loss while I was still receiving my $333 a month or whatever it was. I had $30,000 that I can offset my real estate income with, which is pretty amazing.
And then when we did our house hacking, and we were doing approximately one every 2 years, yeah, we were moving. And believe it or not, Maisha, we were not even moving, Mylisha, sorry. We were not even moving once every 2 years. We were moving like,
oh man, there was a period
we were moving like
10 times in 10 years.
Yeah,
it was
we
nuts.
moved a lot.
And that was with one kid.
Our older son, who's now 7, I think we counted, he's lived in like 5 or 6 different places.
Yeah.
And so we moved around a lot. But at this point, we're like, okay, now with 2 kids, it's sort of a different story.
Probably staying put for a while. All right. Can Joe bring the book next time we're in the office? Yes, I sure can. I think I have a box in the office. If you shouldn't go. If you do, for some required thing, you can grab one out of my office.
Oh, we skipped this one.
Oh.
How do we decide on Huntsville?
Thanks,
and how do you decide on a market when investing out of state? Really great question, Dustin. And I did a ton of research. Joe sort of watched as I read all these books and did all this research. But there's a great book. It's called Emerging Real Estate. Could you type it into the chat? It's called Emerging Real Estate Markets by David Lindahl. And that was the book that gave me the answers I was looking for. And even though it talks specifically about emerging real estate markets, it's also applicable to emerging real estate. It's got an H in it.
Of course it does.
H. There we go. And so it's got all these key principles for evaluating different markets. So for us, the reason why we settled on Huntsville was one, great job growth, strong job growth. That's always the number one factor we look at is job growth, because along with job growth comes population growth. And the more people you have, the more the housing demand is going to go up. And so job growth, population growth, job diversity. So Huntsville is home to a lot of, actually the highest concentration of PhDs per capita in the nation, if you can believe it.
Right there with Berkeley.
There you go. And it's the place where the first rockets were built. So NASA is there, Boeing is there. So they have a lot of government jobs, but they also have a lot of tech jobs. So there's a lot of job diversity there. And then what's cool about Huntsville, what really sets it apart from a lot of the other landlocked markets, is this Redstone Arsenal. So if you were to Google a map of Huntsville, you'd see it's sort of divided into quadrants. And here, up here is downtown Huntsville. And then down here, almost this entire quadrant here is the Redstone Arsenal. And that's government land. And so they're not able to build any housing there. So as you can imagine, as more and more people move to the area for these jobs, that's going to drive up the housing demand, especially because they're not able to build in this large swath of land.
Yeah, so it's sort of a geographical restriction to growth. So I guess on the opposite end of the spectrum, you can imagine something like Houston, Texas, that just continually sprawls and sprawls and sprawls. Huntsville doesn't really have that option because there's this giant army base on one side and a mountain range on the other. They're hills. We wouldn't call them mountains here, but it's a park nonetheless, and there's no building happening. All right, ready for the next one. What kind of property do you invest in when doing syndications? Commercial buildings or 100-unit apartment buildings, or what? It's a great question.
Great question, Dee. And there's syndications out there that invest in all sorts of things. Office buildings, retail, industrial. Mm-hmm. What we specialize in at Good Egg Investments is investing in mostly B-class value-add multifamily. So let me dissect that for you. So B-class, so as you may know, commercial real estate is graded on a scale of A to D, with A being sort of the luxury tier and D being sort of the fringe areas that you want to stay away from. And B and C class in multifamily are sort of the workforce housing, the more affordable housing, but still in decent areas. And so we focus on B class because it's the most recession resistant. And so in good times, people from C class are going to get promotions and raises, and they're going to move up to B class apartments. And then in not so good times, people in A class or people in who are owning homes may have to sell their homes or downgrade from A class to B class. So there's always demand for B class. So we focus on B class value add, which means that property needs some love. Maybe the kitchens haven't been updated in a while, the flooring is peeling apart, the pool area needs some new furniture, all those things, those cosmetic updates. And so that's the value that we add, we bring to the table, is we go in and we do all of that, that renovation to force that equity. And then multifamily, in terms of the number of units, we focus mostly on 100 unit and above buildings. And the reason for that is you get economies of scale. With at least 75 units, you can have your full-time property manager and maintenance team on site. And so that's what we aim for, is at least 75, if not 100 units, but most of ours are 200 units and above.
Yep. And it's not limited just to multifamily, though. We've done self-storage deals, which are another great asset to have in a down market, in a recession, as people are downsizing and moving their physical stuff to storage.
All their fancy ski equipment that they don't want to sell.
That's right. That's right. And do you want to talk about the mobile home parks at all? No.
No. Okay. Right now we focus mainly on multifamily.
Okay. Any other questions? Storage building. All right, Dee. We'll keep in touch as we come across those. All right. Any last questions? I thank you for everyone's input and involvement here, and I love that Alex is on it looks like a duck boat tour. That's pretty cool. Thanks for calling us from wherever you are in the world. You're not social distancing. That's amazing. Cool. Well, if there's no last words, I just thank you all. If there are any follow-up questions, you know where to find us. I'm Joe Dickerson. I'm Joe at dickersonrealty.com.
And I'm at Annie@goodegginvestments.com. And we'll be sending out the recording for this shortly.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We're going to beat you out of the meeting.
Bye.
All right. Thanks, guys. Is that what I do? That one. Okay. Yeah. Awkward end of meeting button. Click now.